Facebook, hang on. Hey, good morning, everybody. As we go to this class, it's a new book. This is the new book for the new year. So I hope you get this book because to really understand these classes, you need to have a book because they're very deep. Seems like this class is a very deep class. Very hard to do this class without looking into the text that they give you. So those are on Facebook, those are on Chabad Torah Direct. Please call the office, 487-2934, 487-2934, and we'll get you a book. We have books at Chabad, or we can send you a book, and you will have a book. Okay, this is a very deep class. I will try to give over this class to the best of my capabilities. And hope that I give this a very deep class, a very deep concept. And it seems like JLI thinks that as through the years learning these classes, you should move up. You should move up your scale in understanding concepts, deep concepts. These are extremely deep concepts in Chassidus and in Kabbalah that I'm going to try to give over at this present time. The class starts off in page number 4 of your book. It starts off in Genesis 4, verse number 3 through number 5. So it starts off this week, Berashit, with the creation of the world and the creation of man, Adam and Eve. And in that creation of Adam and Eve, the Torah tells us that they came together. Adam Yoda as Chava, and Adam knew his wife, and they had twins. They had two sons. They had two sons, Cain and Hevel. It's very quick. Things are happening very quick, even though the first Berashit, the first book of the first Parsha, of Berashit, is 1,500 years of creation. It's very condensed into a very condensed Parsha, the portion of Berashit, all into one Parsha in 1,500 years. The whole creation of the world is in 30 verses. The whole creation of the world from beginning to end. So it's very condensed, and therefore you need to learn the Midrashim. You should really learn the Medrash, what the Medrash says in the Parsha, and especially over here, we learn the Kabbalistic, the Chassidus explanation of the Parsha. This is a fascinating story. The Torah starts off the fascinating story of Cain and Hevel. And it said that Adam and Chava had two sons, Cain and Hevel. According to Rashi, he not only have two sons, he had three daughters. Cain was born with one sister, and Hevel was born with two sisters. So there was 5 people in the world, or there were 7 people because Adam and Chava. So that was the beginning of the world. These 3 men, Adam, Cain, Hevel, and then the 3 and the 4 girls, Chava, and the 3 daughters that were born with Cain and Hevel. Now, the truth is, we are introduced 130 years later that later in the Parsha that Adam had a relationship with his wife again, and they had Shais. Now, really, the whole world comes, especially the Jewish world, comes from Shais. Cain killed Hevel. So Hevel didn't have any children. And ultimately, Cain's whole family were wiped out in the flood. So really, the whole world comes from Shais, the third son of Adam and Eve, and seemingly, he didn't do such a great job in the first two. So the third one was a great hit. And Baruch Hashem, surely Shais is the father of Noach. He's the great grandfather of Noach, and ultimately the great grandfather of Avraham Avinu, etc. Okay, but the Torah tells us a story about Cain and Hevel, which brought to the first murder in history, and that is the murder of Hevel. The story, text number 1. It now came past the end of several days. Yavi Cain, Pri Hadama Mincha Hashem, and Cain brought from the fruitful soil. Now the Medrash, you have to go to the Medrash. Medrash says that Cain and Hevel divided the world. Cain became a farmer. He was involved with the land. He toiled with the land. Cain made all the capability of toiling the land, of bringing forth fruits and vegetation. He was the ultimate farmer. And Hevel decided to go into sheep, into flock, in becoming a herdsman, whatever they call a herdsman or a shepherd. Hevel became a shepherd. And the Medrash says actually that was one of their arguments. Cain said, the world belongs to me. I took the earth. You got to get out of here. I don't want you on the earth. The earth belongs to me. So you need to move out. Hevel said, okay, then give me your clothes, because the clothes that they wore were from sheepskins, etc. So this was one of their arguments, according to the Medrash. But that's what happened. So what happened was, came at the end of the time, a couple of days later, each one brought a sacrifice to God. Cain brought from the earth. He brought, and we'll soon see what he brought. And Hevel, verse number 4, and Hevel, he too brought an offering from the firstborn, from the fattiest of his flock. And God turned to Hevel and his offering. But he did not turn to Cain's offering. And he got depressed. Right? Thank you. Why did God turn to Hevel's offering and not to Cain's offering? That's really the question. Why did God turn to one and not the other? The answer is, actually Rashi brings down the Medrash 2a. What did Cain bring? Cain brought his offering. He didn't bring the best fruits of his land, right? He did the land. He had beautiful fruit. What did he bring? He brought flaxseed. Flaxseed, that was his offering. He brought flaxseed. About flaxseed. So he brought flaxseed. So Medrash says, not only did he bring flaxseed, flaxseed is a beautiful seed and it's a good thing. Gum linen comes out of flaxseed. Flaxseed is a good thing, but he did it worse. From the inferior ones, like a bad tenant who leased a field and pays his rent with a percentage of crop, but eats first the choicest of fruits and leaves the remnants to the landlord. He gave the flax seed. He didn't even give he gave Parsha punished. So he gave flaxseed. He gave not only the flaxseed, but the worst of the flaxseed. In essence, he gave inferior. And that's what happened. Hevel came with the fats of the animal. He came with the choicest animals, the fattest animals, the most well fats in them. And Hevel comes with flaxseed. I mean, first of all, what's so terrible about flaxseed? Even if he gives the word, ultimately he's coming, he's bringing a sacrifice to God. Why would God seemingly show favoritism to a guy who gives more than the guy who gives less? I mean, that's really the question. Guy gave the guy what's terrible. Therefore, there's an optional section here. You see 3a. I mean, he goes into flaxseed. I don't know if I want to go into it, but we'll go. He brought it here, so we'll go with it. So, what's the term about flaxseed? The Gemara goes into. The Gemara goes into this whole story. It's a beautiful story, but the Gemara goes into the story. So the Gemara says, "Amakabel sadam chaveir l'shonu mu'atis lo yazan pishtan." The pishtan is Pishtan is seemingly a flax seed. Is seemingly a flax is something that draws a lot from the land. So if you lease your field to cultivate fewer than 7 years, you should not plant flaxseed because it's going to destroy the land. So if you rented it out for more years, so then you have time for the land to recuperate. But to do to flaxseed, it hurts the land, as it says in 3b. Rashi, because flaxseed depletes the soil's fertility significantly and takes 7 years to recover. So therefore, flaxseed is seemingly a very strong seed. Again, I'm not a farmer. Flaxseed is a strong seed, and it draws the land. In essence, Cain wanted to show something in a destructive way, seemingly. So the Rebbe flips this whole thing around a little bit, but let's continue. 3c, Chaim Vital says, and Cain brought from the fruits of the earth, meaning from the crop that is known as the fruit of the earth. Flax is associated with the earth because it depletes the earth's fertility. So he brought something that negates the earth in essence. He brought something, even though he was the farmer, something that is connected more to the earth than other things that are connected to the earth. He brought something that is totally not wheat, not flour, not fruits. He brought something that seemingly affects the earth, more connected to the earth than anything else, than any other vegetation that he could have brought. We never bring, as you bring even when we bring Bikurim, as Jews also bring for the fruits of the earth to the Beis Hamikdash. It's not flaxseed. It's from the 7 things that the Yisrael was blessed with: figs, pomegranates, etc. But he wanted to show something different. He wanted to show whatever. And the question is, because we have to realize something. Cain and Hevel, whatever you want to say about them, they spoke to the Eibishter. I don't know if anybody in this room spoke to God. So, not recently. So, they spoke to God. These were Yitzir Kappa Shalakadosh Baruch Hu. Yitzir Kappa, these were very special people. These were godly people. And has a conversation with God. It shows what kind of person that he was. He was not just some guy off the street. Cain or Hevel. These were godly people. People that had a very deep relationship with God. And if you see that even Cain, when he sins, Cain really is the first guy who asks forgiveness from God. He realizes his sin. We're not talking about a bum off the street. We're talking about a person that knew exactly what he was doing, and he wanted to express something. Cain wanted to express something. And we really need to understand. Hevel wanted to express something. We understand Hevel. Hevel wanted to express his that the Eibishter gave him choice, beautiful stuff in the world, and he wanted to serve God with the best of that he has. Self-understood. You don't have to explain Hevel. Really, the guy we have to understand is Cain. What over here? By him giving Pishtan. Why did the guy express that he gave Pishtan? He could have said many things. You could say he gave rotten apples. He wanted to give Pishtan. No, therefore you have to understand. These were not simple people. These were not the stam people. These people were created from Adam and Eve, who in the Gemara are called the choice of God made these people himself. And they were extremely godly people. Adam named all the animals. He knew the source of all the animals, etc. Very interesting. Look how he wanted to give. This is more a spiritual explanation. He says, Rabbi Shlomo Ephraim Lon Shitz, it was 1500s. Look what he says. Pishton. If you take the word carbon, sacrifice, you take the last words of the word carbon, the word kuf, you see, the letter kuf, I spell the letter out. You see, he spells the letter out. Kuf, vav, fe. I spell resh, yud, shin. I spell beis, yud, saf. I spell nun, vav, nun. If you take the last letters of this word, what do you have? Pishtan. You have the word pishtan. So Cain, according to this rabbi, he actually had a very deep meaning in the carbon. He wanted to give the backside of the carbon. He wanted to show something deeper than Hevel, in essence. Hevel brought a carbon. Cain wanted to give the last letters of those letters. So that shows you that these were not this was not just a simple expression of a Cain. Cain giving pishtan, flax, is not just because the guy that he grabbed at the end of the day, he said, okay, I'll bring a carbon. Cain wanted to accomplish something in a carbon, in the sacrifice. He brought the last letters of that word carbon. If you spell the Hebrew letter kuf, resh, beit, and nun that comprise the word carbon, you will find that the last letter of these four words spell out the word pishtan. That means in a carbon, which is usually an animal, you have the word pishtan. In every carbon, you have the word pishtan. In every carbon in the Torah, you have the word carbon, you have the word pishtan. Flax. This explains the medrash, like a bad tenant who leases a field and pays his rent and percentage of crop, but eats the first and choicest fruit and leaves the remnants till he gave pishtan. He specifically wanted to give pishtan. He wanted to give a sacrifice. He wanted to give pishtan. First fruits represent the first letters of the word carbon. This implies a choicest specimen, the first and the best, worthy of serving and offering to God. The remnants refers to the last letters of the word carbon, which means flax. And that's the deeper of why he brought pishtan. He didn't give the answer why he brought pishtan and what he was trying to accomplish. What was Cain trying to accomplish? Why did he dafka bring pishtan? We're not talking here about a simple person. Talk about a godly individual. So therefore, the question the story begs the answer of what was Cain trying to accomplish. So it's self-understood why self-understood why God turned to Cain, to Hevel's, right? Because he gave the choice. As the Rambam writes, text number 5, those who desire to gain merit should subdue their evil inclination, amplify their generosity, and bring offerings from the choicest of the item they're bringing. That's the way it should be. You should always bring from the best, but you're capable. Indeed, the Torah states, and Abel brought his chosen flock from the superior ones, and God turned to Abel as well. That's simple. The simple lesson of Cain and Hevel, that you should be all like Hevel. We should give the best. Whatever we can give, the best of what we can give. It applies to everything we give for the sake of good. The good God. It should be for the most attractive, the highest quality. If you build a house for prayer, build a shul, it should be nicer than your own dwelling. If you feed the hungry, We should feed them from the best, tastiest foods on our table. If we clothe them naked, we should clothe them with the most attractive garments. If we consecrate something, we should consecrate the best of our possession. As the Torah states, all of the superior qualities should be given to God. That's it. Kol chelav Hashem. That's what the way the Eibishter, that's what we should be. You don't have to be a genius to understand this thing. But that's the lesson. But the question still stands. What was Cain trying to do? What was Cain trying to snub the Eibishter? He was stupid. He didn't. What was the message? What is he trying to make God angry? What, Cain didn't know that God's you're not gonna respond to him? What is Cain trying to do over here? What is Cain trying to do over here? Cain is trying to do something, my friend. Going to reincarnation. We're going to go into, according to Chassidus, not the real progeny. Progeny, that's the right word, the children, the offspring. We're going into what Cain represents and what Hevel represents. Cain and Hevel represent two concepts. Chassidus says, Kabbalah says. Cain and Hevel send two concepts in the world, which is later reincarnated in Moshe and Pharaoh. So the Zohar writes that Cain, that Hevel, Hevel, that Moshe is a reincarnation of Hevel. And Cain is a reincarnation of Egypt.
How can you be reincarnated
As that's why Moshe kills that Egyptian. Hevel kills Cain. He's reincarnating that Egyptian that God that Moshe Rabbeinu kills.
Egypt, you mean everyone?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Don't get in the person, in the concept. The struggle between Cain and Hevel is later reincarnated between Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not talking Moshe as the person only, but in the concept of Jewish, the Hevel philosophy and the Egyptian philosophy. Because where is Pishtan? Where was Pishtan most prevalent was in Egypt, as you'll soon see in a moment. So everything what happened in the beginning of creation between Cain and Hevel, and why the Torah tells us, is really manifests itself in the story of Egypt and the Jewish people, which ultimately manifests itself in the story of history between Jews and the world, is the struggle of Cain and Hevel. You should just know, that's interesting, not brought over here, but the difference in the word Cain and Hevel. Cain means acquirement, Hevel means breath. In Kabbalah again, Cain is the physical, Hevel is God breathed within us a breath of life, is the spiritual. Cain kills Hevel. I understand why Cain kills Hevel, right? The physical takes over. The acquirement takes over and takes over the Hevel. Kills it sometimes. Many times. What's the story? What was the struggle? Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. What's the struggle between Moses and Pharaoh? What is their struggle? What is the struggle between Moshe Rabbeinu, the Jewish people, and Pharaoh? Right? The struggle is God. That's the real struggle. It's not slavery or not. It's the real struggle. Do you believe in God? Don't you believe in God, right? God, Moshe Rabbeinu comes and says, God says, let the Jews be God. They say, he says, what? Right? That's really the struggle. That is the struggle between the Pharaoh and Moshe Rabbeinu. So he goes to 6:8. Let's go. So really, this struggle started in Cain and Hevel. This struggle started already in Cain. Cain says, the earth belongs to me, right? I'm the balabas of the world. The world belongs to me. God is not, who's God? God is responding, not responding. You'll soon see in a second, actually, Cain was, according to the Rebbe, was a very deep spiritual guy. He was a big Kabbalist, okay? We'll soon get to there. We'll get to 6:8, look at the Medrash. The Medrash says, Rabbi Shmuel said, from Cain's progeny come all the wicked sinners who are treasonous against God and proclaim, who we don't require a drop of your rain. We don't need you. Pharaoh said to Moses, what do I need God? I have the Nilus, I have the Nile. Rain. Anything I need for my crops is rain, but I don't need the rain. I have the Nilus. I have the Nile. Yak said, I have the Nile, I made it. I have the Nile. The Nile gives everything I need, and I made the Nile. So text number 6b. Pick it to Rabbi Lezer. You claim that he makes rain and do fall. Who cares? I have already the Nile that emerges from beneath the trees of the life, and the waters are blessed in abundance. Who needs the rain? I don't need to pray Masha Baruch Hamed Geshem. I don't need to pray to God for rain. I got the Nile. So therefore, he was in denial, right, of God. So that was the struggle. Therefore, Rabbi Chaim Vital says, in the name of the Rashbi, Moshe Rabbeinu, Olav Shalom, Gilgal, Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher, peace be upon him, was a reincarnation of Abel, the son of Adam. And the Egyptian that Moshe Rabbeinu slew was the reincarnation of Cain, Abel's brother. And that's where it was the tikkun, the rectification of Cain killing Abel was ultimately rectified, talking about thousands of years later, by Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not revenge, it's rectification. Not revenge. What?
Don't these people ever become nice people? I thought was like, don't they ever?
That's how they rectify it. So everything is being rectified.
Elevated in many.
Comes out of Cain? No, don't say you said came from Cain. You go into I'll tell you all the reincarnations. Yeah. Ultimately, everything comes to attract, comes something good, something good out of it. Essence, what it means over here, again, because Moshe Rabbeinu does not come from Hevel, right? Moshe Rabbeinu comes from Shais, biologically. Doesn't come from Hevel. Neither the Egyptians come from Cain, right? Because the Egyptians come from Chum, which is a son of Noach. So we all come from Shais. Both entities come from Shais. We're not talking about that. We're talking the spiritual reincarnation or the powers that they receive, in essence. We're not talking about the physical connection. Cain is not connected physically to Egypt. Neither is Hevel physically connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Abish to put right away in Berashit, the struggle between Cain and Hevel is that struggle between Moshe Rabbeinu, that Rizal says, and the Egyptians. Moshe Rabbeinu came with the philosophy that there's a God in the world, and we need to do the right thing to God. And the Egyptians said, I don't know, I never heard of this guy. I don't need God. I might believe in God. They believed in God. We believe in God, but when we need God, we will call him. Until then,
specific gods. On the God of the earth, they don't believe in a God.
But that God has the power over the world or power over each and every individual. No, that's why Yetzias Mitzrayim was the victory of Moshe Rabbeinu, was the victory of Hevel ultimately. That, you know what? That everything that we have in the world is we need to give the choices to God. And that's what that's what we need to do. And we are secondary in comparison to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that culminated in Yetzias Mitzrayim and going out of Egypt. The truth is that's the story of Yoina, really the story of Yoina. Yom Kippur, according to the Medrash, I don't know how it works out, but Yoina, when it came to Nineveh, the Medrash says that it was the Pharaoh of Egypt. When it was the Pharaoh of Egypt physically, or is he his reincarnation? So ultimately, what did the Pharaoh, when the king of Nineveh heard that Yonah told him that God's gonna punish, he got up and he did tshuva. So that was his rectification. Ultimately, he realized we need to do what is right. Yeah.
So would you concept within us?
Yes. Yeah.
And in a heaven,
Correct.
thing happening.
Correct. Between the spiritual and the physical. The Medrash says another interesting thing. That why did it bring a sacrifice? It was Pesach. So the Medrash connects it even more. This story, Cain and Hevel, and the story of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jews, because he says this story that happened between Cain and Hevel, bring a sacrifice, happened on Passover. Not Passover yet. Happened on the 15th day of Nisan of that year. The Medrash says, the fascinating Medrash, 7:8. The evening of Passover arrived, and Adam said to his sons, on this night in the future, Israel will bring a Paschal offering. You should bring offering before your Creator. Imagine, so Adam Arishan already know that what's going to be special about this night.
It's a long time between that statement and the first.
We're talking about this is Yom Rad, this is the first year of creation. No, 2,500 years, 2,440. He said it to his two sons, Cain and Abel. So that's what happened. So what happened? So what happened? Think about it. So what happened? Each exactly what happened later. The Egyptian, what was their famous vegetation was pishtan. Egyptians, their vegetation was pishtan. Jewish people bring as a sacrifice of the lamb. Exactly what Cain and Abel did on the first Passover. It's exactly what happened thousands of years later on Passover.
Which came first? Is it because what Cain and Abel?
Yeah, it's because what Cain and Abel, it's interconnected. Whatever, it's interconnected. I don't know what came first. It means that that is the interconnection. It doesn't make it. It doesn't matter. That's the semantics. I don't know. You might listen. If the Cain and Hevel story would be different, the story of Egypt would be different too. Could be. I'm not so. That's going a little deeper. We'll go right. So could be. So Cain and Hevel, in essence, we're reenacting the Passover situation that would happen thousands of years later. Cain saw in his destiny was amongst the Jewish oppressors. Cain saw So here the Rabbi Eliyahu HaKohen, Haitamar, the Kabbalist in the 1600s, he said, Cain saw that his destiny was to be among the oppressors, subjugated the Jews. So he did not rejoice with the liberation of the Jews, right? Here Adam says it's Yom Tov, it's Pesach, we have to bring the sacrifice, we have to bring a sacrifice. He said, you know what, I'm going to bring a sacrifice, but I'm going to bring Pishta. I'm Egyptian. It's amazing stuff. I'm an Egyptian. The liberation of the Jews was a bad and bitter for him. Remnants of his plate in a manner of a scornful. That's why he brought Pishta. He said, the Eibishter, I don't want to hear. I have to bring a kibbutz avim, and it's Pesach. But if I want to celebrate Pesach, I'm going to celebrate with Egypt. I'm going to celebrate the Egyptian way. I'm going to give you Pishta. Pishta is symbolic of Egypt. So, because that's what in essence, that's who they are. So in essence, that's who they are. It just shows you that things don't change in a way. Maybe still put a system into that it continues. It went from the Egyptians to the Babylonians to the Greeks. It's all the same thing. The continuation right over here. The struggle between what is MS, what is holy, and what's unholy. It's almost this. We're going back to the original times. The struggle between the holy and the unholy. It's almost not even the struggles today are so because of political correctness. You're not allowed to even say something holy that might not be politically correct. It's today. Cain and Hevel continue today. Hasn't changed. A hint in his choice of wickedness and siding with his progeny, Egypt, who rebel against God, he selected flax as his offering, which grows in Egypt besides the Nile River. That's why Rashi says Pishtan was so connected to Egypt that who Nilus Nara Mitzrayim Pishan. It came from, it says, where does the Nilus come from? It comes from the word Pishan. It comes from the right says there were 4 rivers that came out of Gan Eden. One was Pishan, and that went to the Nile. And that's why in Egypt it's called Pishan, because the flax that to grow. As the past state, the reference to this one, and he who works flax will be ashamed. Getting this, this is deep stuff. So you go going back, it's going to go a little deeper.
The sins of the father were upon the children.
No, but there you see how.
The sins of Cain.
But then you see how deep the philosophy of Cain. Cain didn't just bring Pishtan because he didn't have anything to bring. He brought Pishtan because he understood what he wanted to accomplish. He was trying to accomplish something with bringing Pishtan. He was trying to show that, in essence, he does not agree with this situation. Now, why didn't he agree with this situation? That's really the question. Egypt, I can understand. Right? There were no Jews. This is all a spiritual fight right now. This is not a physical fight. This is a spiritual fight. Ultimately, he ultimately turned into a physical fight because Cain kills Hevel, like the Egyptians killed the Jews. So it ultimately comes, but to begin with, this fight was a spiritual fight. It was a spiritual, they were having a spiritual fight. So if they were having a spiritual fight, I can understand the Egyptians who were heathenists, they had deities, they were worshiping idols. But Cain wasn't worshiping any idols. Cain brought a sacrifice to God. He was a religious guy. And Hevel brought a sacrifice to God. So really the question demands further, what was Cain thinking about? Cain's thinking about, what was Cain's philosophy to think that he's going to give Pishtan?
Who got 2 women and who got 1? Who got 2 women and who got 1? Could have been angry about that.
The Medrash said he was angry about that too. And there was 3 girls, so we're fighting over
There
the
were
actual.
3 women. And
That's another story. That's another Medrash. We can't explain all the Medrashim that are in this Berashit. Trust me, there's a lot of Medrashim in this Berashit. Rebbe explains what Cain really was thinking. This, and what was his mistake. Rebbe brings down an Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe brings down a statement of the Alter Rebbe in the Kutetera portion. Flax. We say flax. Flax. Where do we find flax in the Torah? Linen. And the beauty of linen in the Torah is the big dikuna. The clothes of the Kohen. When did the Kohen Gadol wear linen? On Yom Kippur. When he went into the Holy of Holies, he wore linen. There you go, but we can't. Yeah, well, linen, right. So linen, why? Because linen shows in a very deep. Flax shows in a deep thing. Flax shows in the concept of oneness. Oneness. The clothes worn by the high priest during the Yom Kippur service was made of white linen. It is written, he will dress in sacred bad tunic and bad pants. Bad is flax. Linen.
B-O-D, not B-A-D.
Bad.
They were B-A-D.
But that's the Hebrew word. Beis daled. Bad. It's not bad. Bad.
Yeah, no.
Bad. It was sacred vessels. This is Leviticus. Bad. The Torah calls it bad. How do we know what that bad in Hebrew? That bad in Hebrew is the material for the flax plant. How do we know bad? Bad. Why? The word bad describes a plant that grows from a ground stalk by stalk. The Gemara says, how do we know bad? And the Torah means linen. How do we know? How do you know? Bad. Why did the Torah use the regular word of linen? Pishton is the regular Hebrew word. The Torah calls the garment of the Kohen Gadol bad. The Gemara answers the question because again, I'm not a farmer. You can look it up on Google. That a flax, each one grows separately. Each kernel has a separate stalk. She explains, each stalk grows from its own seed and doesn't split into multiple stalks. Flax is the only plant that grows this way. Every other plant, such as wheat, barley, split into multiple stalks. The Rebbe says the mystical reason for this singularity is that flax plant receives its spiritual sustenance from the sacred realm of God and strength and oneness. Now you can understand why Jews needed to be enslaved in Egypt. It says they emptied out Egypt from its spirituality. They needed to go to Egypt. Egypt was the clipper of God. Egypt was the clipper. Egypt was the opposite of God. Because in Egypt there was something very, very spiritual, and that was reflected in their pishtan, in their flax. I believe in God's oneness. And when you come to God's oneness, there's no difference between good and bad. There's no difference between the choicest and the unchoicest. Multiplicity into the world. I'm bringing the flax. I'm going to give something that shows that everything is equal. Same can be said of Cain's offering. It's written, and Cain brought an offering to God from fruits of the soil. Our sages of blessed memory explained that this was flax. And then this was because a singular stalk each represents God's instinct oneness. What?
Did you say why each stalk represents God's
Because only the flax is never splits into a multiple. It only has one per stalk. And that's why in Kippur, the high priest was required to enter the Holy of Holies, God's sacred realm of instinct oneness, to secure atonement for the Jewish people. And it says that when they will be forgiven, he therefore dressed in linen, spun from flax. Though singular nature makes it fitting vestment for this oneness. So on Yom Kippur, which we passed not long ago, it was one day a year, it was in one place, it was one Kohen Gadol in the Holy of Holies, and he wore linen because it showed on the concept of God's oneness. God alone will lead them. It refers to the realm where God exists precisely as it was before creation. For God, and that's what God really wanted. And bad. Better. Serving God. If we're serving God, doesn't make difference if you bring a carbon out of fat or you bring a carbon out of flax seed. Even the flax seed, the seed, take away everything else. So the Rebbe says today, look how the Rebbe learns this. Cain sought to demonstrate God's instinct unity. Cain was a big Kabbalist. He sought to demonstrate God's instinct unity. There's no differentiation of components. That is why it wasn't important to bring the plant's distinctive superior portion. On the contrary, Cain wanted to show the opposite. We're bringing a sacrifice to God. Then we bring, doesn't make a difference. I'll bring the shmatas. I'll bring shmatas. I'll bring the worst. It's one by God. If we're going to connect to the essence of God, there's no difference between bringing the fats of my brother's fats of a big fat lamb or bringing shmatas, bringing Berashit, the leftovers from the fleets, from the seed flax. Seeds. Underscore, right? So on the contrary, bring the best part of a plant would have underscored the diversity of the plant's components. That in the plant itself, you have the good part of the plant, you have the bad part of the plant, superior, ordinary, inferior. We're going to God. The oneness of God. What does it make a difference in the oneness of God? What you give. Demands. So why did God listen to his sacrifice? And why, if that was Cain's intention, that seems like a superior intention. That seems like much more superior than Hevel's sacrifice. That answers in text number 10b. Nevertheless, Cain was misguided. He was misguided. It's not God's intention that we seek to be subsumed by his transcendent absolute oneness, because that would require us to withdraw from the differentiation of the world. To live in Gan Eden, then that's the way to do it. You're living in the world. They wish to put you in a world. It's after the sin of the sin of the tree of knowledge. There is differentiation. Question is how you take from a world of differentiation and you bring it to the Eibishter. How do you do that in a world of differentiation? You want to live. That's what happened with the sons of Aaron. The truth is, they wanted to leave the world. They wanted to oneness it, and they did. And they did. And they did. And in essence, oneness, because that would require us to withdraw from the differentiation of the world. Rather, God wants us to see Him in the diverse world. Most important component of it. This requires that we give our best to God. Don't fall into this full things. You know what? I don't have to give my best to God. I've served God. I give Him whatever I want to give Him. That's falling into the Cain mistake.
And both good and bad is connected to Hashem.
No, but how do we ultimately in this world? By separating the capability of separating. We're in the world, we need to separate what's good and bad. That to understand the bad has to be changed, the bad has to be something pushed away, but not that everything is good. Oh, it's godly. Let's do God is part of everything. Do everything. No, you have to know what is holy and what is unholy. What is godly, what is ungodly, what is profane, and what is you have to know. You say it every Saturday night in your davening, and you're about Ben Kodesh L'Chel, Ben Er L'Choshech, Ben Yisrael La'amim, Ben Yom HaShishi, Ben Yom HaShvi Shabbos. There's a difference. You're living in a world, doesn't make one better over the other per se. Both have the agenda. But you have to know how to separate the issues. You have to know how to separate the issues. When Mashiach comes, there'll be a revelation of God. You'll reach up to that level of oneness. But at this present time, what's called in Kabbalah and Chassidus, Avodas HaBerurim, the Avodah, the service of separation, the service of rectification, the service of elevation. And that takes to make something holy. When you say something is holy, is that it's holy, it's different. Harry, for example, you say Kedushin, you are separate, you are different. You're not like anybody else. It's something, I love everybody, but you're different.
By having only oneness, there would be no free choice. All march in the same tune.
Okay.
We wouldn't hear any differences.
First of all, we wouldn't give anybody other space. So that we wouldn't give anybody else any space. So in essence, that's why Cain said to Hevel, "You can't bring a sacrifice." The oneness of God. You cannot. You're a fat animal.
Why did Cain?
So you bring a sacrifice. What?
Why did Cain think he was superior?
In essence, because the opposite. Cain said, "I don't need to have. I'm going to the most lowest dimension. You are going to the physical high dimension. I'm going to the most highest dimension in spirituality. So therefore, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. You are actually diffusing the true essence of oneness. You are bringing about multiplicity in the world, and that's not the ultimate. And that's why he killed him. Because in essence, Cain wanted to show that this is the purpose of the world. Oneness. David said, yeah, you're right, but not now.
Why was Hevel not oneness?
Because he brought from the fattest. He brought the fat. He brought the fattest animal, and he brought the fats of the animal. Like we bring a carbon. When you bring a carbon to the Eibishter, ultimately, you bring the fattest animal, and part of the fattest animal, bring the fats of the animal. We bring the best of every animal. We bring oneness through separation. Through separation, we accomplish the aspect of oneness. Through separation, to separate and to showing that the Eibishter, that there is a concept in this world that is special. So this shul is a special place. Why? Because we made it holier. We elevated it. We put it on a pedestal. And that's what we should do. And that brings the Eibishter oneness in this place, in this world. Like text number 11, the Rebbe ends. The lesson we can each derive from this story is that when it comes to serving God, we must be scrupulous, observe the ethic of beautifying our mitzvahs. Don't go to the things, oh, what does God need beauty? Right, that's what everybody says. Oh, shouldn't you be humble? Shouldn't you? No. No, that was Cain's mistake. And we all have the same mistake. That when it comes to God, suddenly we need to be humble. Suddenly we need simplicity. No. You should have beauty in your home, and you should make sure God's beautiful. You should make sure the synagogue is beautiful too. Have a beautiful couch, and have a beautiful pair of tefillin, and have a beautiful menorah. Whatever your capacity, whatever your capability. Don't go into debt, but whatever your capability, you should do. So Cain was lofty. And that way Cain does tshuva. Don't make it. Cain does tshuva. He realizes not something that you can knock him totally. Ultimately, Cain does tshuva.
Why are all his progeny sinners?
Because his children didn't do tshuva. His children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. No, because again, it's not a progeny. We're not talking about the progeny. We're talking about the spiritual progeny. Not talking about the progeny. Egypt was not his progeny. Egypt was his spiritual progeny.
Okay, he did tshuva.
But they didn't do it. They was the one to sign to do tshuva.
Why did he get concepts like that?
I don't know. It's the wrong word. Once the Eibishter brought into the world, Tevara, they have Kain v'Hevel. You have this concept. The concept, till Mashiach comes, you're going to have Tevara. Not the Kain. Don't blame the guy Kain. It's the concept. We're talking the concept of Kain Hevel in the world, not the person. It came from Adam and Chava, yeah. When they ate from the tree of knowledge. When they ate from the tree of Tevara. That's where it all came from. Lofty Cain, who experienced God's oneness, nevertheless slid into spiritual abyss, simply because he was not scrupulous about bringing the best. Satake was a godly guy, but he fell into that concept, not to take the opposite. You won't be oneness, then you should take the best. He flipped.
He held the best for himself.
How much more so must we each climb continuously ever higher in godly service by constantly enhancing beautification of our mitzvahs. We should continue to do so until every mitzvah is formed with the most beautiful, good, and attractive. We shouldn't fall into Cain. We should be like Hevel, that beautifies every mitzvah, even though Cain had a very lofty concept, he was not a stupid man, and he was not totally evil. He just basically had a philosophy that was misguided, and ultimately that philosophy continues throughout history, where we struggle with these two concepts. When it comes to the physical, we like to beauty. When it comes to the spiritual, for some reason, we're not so interested in beautifying it, many of us, and we need to do the opposite. We need to beautify God's mitzvahs, to say, this is my God, I shall make him beautiful, because I realize that that's the way I elevate godliness in this oneness, in this beautiful concept. I elevate God in the world. Deep sikha, as I said, should learn it again. That's why you should have the book, read over these things, and you'll get maybe a little understanding in it. I wish you all a wonderful and beautiful and happy, gorgeous day.